Hi, folks. This is Joe Firestone for Empowering Democracy. Our topic for tonight is a common crook. What I want to talk about here tonight is some views on Sam Bankman Fried, the former crypto billionaire who intervened in a lot of elections this year. He intervened on the anti-progressive side, generally against progressives, in many, many elections. He may have lost progressives as many as 4 seats, spent a lot of money, must have spent $30 million in various campaigns. But there were 3 articles about him that appeared in the American Prospect. And more recently, there were a number of other articles that appeared in the Lever that I haven't had a chance to review, but which promised to be pretty good because they were by David Sirota and Matt Stoller and some of the Lever staff. I'm sorry, it's not Lever, it's Lever. Steve Oprah says, I almost bought some crypto. Steve says, smash the like button. Smash the like button, please. Please do smash the like button. Dee is here from Around the World with Brandy and Dee. In fact, we just were on together a few moments ago, trying to make sense out of the conflict between Turkey and some of the Kurds. There are lots of attacks going on somewhere in Kurdistan, different places in Kurdistan. Where the Kurds are organizing to try to get self-determination. And the Turks are attacking them beyond the borders of Turkey, in other areas as well. Hello, Kay. So glad you're here. Okay, let's get to the American Prospect pieces. There was one on November 14th. That was simply titled, and that's where I got the title for this particular stream. First piece was by Robert Kuttner, who for years was the editor of the Prospect. He entitled his piece, Sam Bankman Fried, A Common Crook. There's a picture of Sam Bankman Fried, who was a young guy, a very young guy. It seems a very foolish guy also. Sam Bankman Fried, CEO and founder of FTX, which is the firm dealing in crypto, walks near the U.S. Capitol in Washington on September 15th, 2022. What has almost gotten lost in the Sam Bankman Fried saga is that the former billionaire scam was a fundamental violation of the securities laws, using customer funds to place his own bets, his personal control of both the exchange, FTX, and his investment company, Alameda, and the commingling of their funds puts Bankman Fried right up there with Ponzi and Madoff as common crooks and outright felons. Bankman-Fried's disgrace will have some salutary side effects. It will derail the effort heavily promoted by Bankman-Fried himself in his political giving and his lobbying to take most by crypto regulation away from the SEC in favor of the light touch Commodity Futures Trading Commission. This ploy was shamelessly welcomed by the FTC chair, whose name is Russell Benham, and his patron, Senator Debbie Stabenow, also known as Debbie Stab Me Now, for obvious reasons, whose Senate Agriculture Committee stood to gain jurisdiction and fundraising opportunities. That caper, says Kuttner, is now kaput. Well phrased, I thought. Another side effect will be to cast grave doubt on the entire fable that crypto is either useful or reliable. If we are fortunate, says Kuttner, it will sink the entire sector before more damage is done. The irony is that an innovation promoted for its transparency is in fact a dark playpen for insiders at the expense of investors. This is why we have security laws in the first place. The abuses just keep repeating themselves in new forms. But Bankman-Fried's fall should not obscure some questions about his rise. When Bankman-Fried amassed his billions by creating a platform, FTX, that he personally controlled and incorporated offshore, this is widely seen as merely a clever business model. In fact, it violated the core premises of Securities and Exchange regulation dating back to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Any exchange that is someone's personal property is a scam waiting to happen. Incorporating it offshore compounds the damage. The New York Stock Exchange was a not-for-profit until 2007. Defenders of crypto are trying to scapegoat SEC Chair Gary Gensler, who is the one real hero of this mess. Some, Senator Pat Toomey, are charging him with having been too aggressive driving crypto offshore. Others, Andrew Ross Sorkin, charge him with being too lax. The fact is that the SEC, somewhat hamstrung by hostile court rulings, has been doing its best to crack down on abuses that keep on ramifying. Matt Stoller has a terrific summary of the attempt to blame the one tough, honest, and knowledgeable cop. That's Gary Gensler, of course. One bizarre aspect of this story has been the remarkably gentle coverage of Bankman-Fried in the New York Times. The Times piece last Wednesday, as Bankman-Fried's efforts to raise money were collapsing, seemed to blame investors and rival crypto scamster Changpeng Zhao more than Bankman-Fried himself, compared FTX's woes to a bank run, and even mentioned the fraud at the heart of Bankman-Fried's business model. A Times story yesterday touchingly titled, quote, FTX's collapse casts a pall on a philanthropy movement, unquote. Times must be losing its collective mind. Anyway, that story took at face value that Bankman Fried's interest in the effective altruism in, in that movement was sincere and not just an effort to burnish his reputation and access. The story reported, quote, Mr. Bankman Fried went into finance with the stated intention of making a fortune that he could then give away. In an interview with the New York Times last month concerning effective altruism, Mr. Bankman Fried said he planned to give away a vast majority of his fortune in the next 10 to 20 years to effective altruist causes, unquote. The piece played Bankman Fried's collapse as a tragedy for philanthropy. Boy, the Times has gone nuts in recent years. When a prior generation of robber barons engaged in philanthropy, at least they were good for the money and managed to stay inside the law. Just based on what is already on the public record, Bankman Fried deserves a long prison term. So Robert Kuttner lays it right out on the table for us in that particular piece. Here's another one by Bob Kuttner on November 16th in the American Prospect. It's called Bankman and the Bastardization of Bankruptcy. Here's another picture of Bankman Fried, this time in a suit, wearing a surgical mask. It's like he couldn't afford to buy one of the better masks. So there is Bankman Fried with his arms folded, testifying during a House Financial Services Committee meeting on December 8th, 2021 on Capitol Hill in Washington. Boy, I wonder what he said there. That was almost a year ago. At this writing, Sam Bankman Fried has appointed a new CEO of his company, John Ray III, as well as 5 new independent, quote unquote, board members. He has hired a legal team comprised of America's fanciest bankruptcy lawyers. They are preparing a very complex bankruptcy filing in a Delaware court that will allow him to write off debts while he tries to raise new capital. Now, isn't that a sweet racket? His lawyers are trying to persuade the bankruptcy judge to allow Bankman Fried and his team to keep control of the company. The judge does have the option of appointing an independent trustee to manage the process, displacing Bankman Fried, his confederates, and the affiliated lawyers who stand to collect a fortune in fees. But Bankman Fried and his cronies are arguing, as is typically the case, that the very people who fleeced customers and drove the company into the ground are knowledgeable about how the scam worked and thus best positioned to recover as much money as possible. A likely story, of course. One of the myths of the neoliberal period. So bankruptcy judges often let the malefactors keep control. Is there something wrong with this picture? You bet there is. The entire bankruptcy system is one big double standard. Individuals who declare personal bankruptcy usually find that their credit is ruined and their economic lives destroyed. But corporate thugs frequently get to write off past debts and sail merrily on, often repeating variations on the same scam. One outrageous case, which the prospect has covered in detail, involved a private equity operator named Eddie Lampert, who fleeced the iconic Sears Roebuck, took it into bankruptcy, and managed to keep control of its choicest bits. This tactic is standard practice in the repeated pillaging of retail by private equity companies. Get control of a retail company that has cash and real estate assets. Strip the assets. Take the company into bankruptcy. Write off debts, including worker pension funds. Rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat. Meanwhile, student debtors are explicitly prohibited from using personal bankruptcy to write off punishing debt. Very fair legal system we have, isn't it? An apt example, though, an apt contrast. Student debtors are prohibited from using personal bankruptcy to write off their student debts. But gamblers in the crypto casino get to play bankruptcy games and to do just that. So, Senator Elizabeth Warren came to prominence as a law professor expert in bankruptcy law and critical abuses. As a leader of the National Bankruptcy Review Commission beginning in 1995, she fought a heroic battle that she ultimately lost in 2005 to keep the banking industry from persuading Congress to toughen the terms of bankruptcy for individuals, but not for corporations. When Warren says the rules are rigged, she knows whereof she speaks. We need fundamental reform of the bankruptcy laws, as Warren has proposed in the Consumer Bankruptcy Reform Act. In the meantime, at the very least, bankruptcy judges should stop letting scoundrels keep control of the companies that they fraudulently milked. So those were, I think, two terrific pieces from Robert Kuttner. The Prospect also published a third piece on this subject, which was very good, on November 17th. That last one was on November 16th. This last piece was written by Dave Dayen, the editor, okay, and a tremendous writer as well. It's called, and it was analytically very good, "We already have laws to stop crypto fraud." This was on November 17, 2022, by the way, in the prospect. There's a little picture of FTX with some cryptocurrency. The most obvious and inevitable financial collapse in a while. The spectacular meltdown of the apparently fraud-riddled crypto exchange, FTX, just keeps getting wilder. FTX had nearly 10 times as many liabilities as liquid assets. The executives at FTX knew that the company had lent customer funds to its associated hedge fund, Alameda Research, to cover debts. Sam Bankman Fried, FTX and Alameda's founder, and a future prison inmate, apparently installed a back door, quote unquote, to move funds out of FTX without triggering accounting or compliance concerns. More than 1 million creditors are seeking restitution in bankruptcy. There was some sort of hack that appears to have been an inside job, among other efforts, that looked like insiders being allowed to abscond with cash. It would be great if the FTX debacle was somehow unusual and not just a badly run version of the kinds of scams we've seen throughout financial history, particularly in the crypto space. A lot of focus is now going into how to properly regulate crypto as if it's a legitimate financial instrument that we need to standardize. The better way to look at it is as a vice or deliberate fraud scheme like cigarettes, also illegal drugs, also multi-level marketing operations, or gambling. These products have different regulatory environments, from law enforcement approaches to sin taxes to warning labels to advertising bans to assistance for the addicted. Some combination of that seems like a better idea than trying to maintain the fiction that crypto is a legitimate, also productive, wealth building instrument. What we have right now is a free fall over crypto regulation. FTX had been influential in pushing a bill that would move most of the oversight to the overworked and understaffed Commodity Futures Trading Commission. Gary Gensler, chair of the SEC, which has filed lawsuits against crypto companies, has bashed the CFTC bill as too light touch, noting that FTX helped consult on the bill. God bless you, honey. CFTC's chairman, Rostin Benham, was a staffer for Senator Debbie Stabenow, co-author of the bill and the chair of the Senate Agriculture Committee, which has jurisdiction over the CFTC and whose members would benefit financially from adding free spending crypto to their oversight roster. FTX's chief DC lobbyist until this week, by the way, was a former CFTC commissioner. It's a classic case of greasy Washington corruption that makes me feel like I need a shower. That's what Dave Dayen said, not me. I'm just reading what he said. Anyway, the Agriculture Committee was going to advance that CFTC oversight this week, but the FTX collapse ended that, and members are now giving back their FTX campaign donations. Jesus. How sad for them, says Dave Dayen. That's amazing. Boy, that was a close call. They were going to advance that CFTC oversight bill this week. But the collapse of FTX just ended that. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Democrat of New York, and Cynthia Lummis, I don't know if she pronounced it Lummis or Loomis, Republican of Wyoming, and a holder of crypto, have different different industry friendly bill that also gives the FTC primary regulatory authority and requires a study of the opportunities and risks of allowing digital assets into retirement accounts. Other industry wish list bills have been authored by Representative Patrick McHenry, a Republican of North Carolina, the likely incoming chair of the House Financial Services Committee. Okay. A half-hearted effort to regulate stable coins, which are digital tokens that are supposed to be pegged to the US dollar like a money market fund, hasn't gone anywhere. Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat Massachusetts, seems to want the SEC in the lead, but also wants any crypto regulation to be comprehensive, quote unquote, including restrictions on Bitcoin mining and crypto-enabled money laundering. Senator Sherrod Brown, chair of the Senate Banking Committee, is leaning toward holding a hearing on FTX, but hasn't committed to any legislation, in part because of the expected pull of the industry toward watering down congressional action. Out of everyone, Brown has the best of this argument. We're hearing a now more than ever, quote unquote, drumbeat right now, as in that Congress needs to regulate crypto now more than ever, given all the scandals. But the truth is, we typically police frauds through civil and criminal law enforcement. Rug pulls, pump and dumps, and other scams are rampant in crypto. Okay, the delightful website, Web3 is going just great, chronicles this on a daily basis. Stiffing customers who buy your investment product, okay, is illegal. FTX is already under investigation by the Justice Department and the SEC. And the SEC is also investigating Binance and Coinbase. As usual with our regulators, the problem isn't lack of laws, but lack of will. FTX has already licensed and registered with the CFTC. They did nothing with the regulatory authority they had, and I'm not hopeful about what would happen if they get more. By contrast, the SEC has demanded that crypto assets register as securities, which would force segregation between exchanges and brokers' sales. The industry has refused to do so, and instead appealed to Congress to strip the SEC's jurisdiction. With that stalled, the SEC can fine companies who don't comply with their rules out of existence. This has been dismissively called by regulation by enforcement, quote unquote, by the industry. Why, yes, that's how you root out fraud. Congress can get involved by fully funding the SEC's effort to crack down on what can only be called a crime wave. New legislation doesn't have to be part of that. It's highly unlikely that anything coming out of the current legislative process would protect anyone. It would more likely hook crypto into the broader financial system, which regulators have resisted. That's the only reason why the crypto collapse hasn't infected the rest of the financial system. If the government puts together a regulatory regime for a fraud scheme, the too big to fail conundrum can take hold, where they might feel obligated to bail out the crypto industry to protect investors. But law enforcement and handcuffs can perform that task of investor protection much more officially. Much more efficiently. Maybe if digital assets were serving some vital purpose, we would need to tailor some regime to allow it to blossom. But as Dean Baker explains, that does not really exist with crypto. Arguments to ban digital assets fall along the lines of arguments to ban casinos, cigarettes, or alcohol. They usually are pretty unpopular. People are free to gamble, for example, though local governments offer services for gambling addiction. This is somewhat incongruous but consistent with the recognition that outright bans don't work politically. That said, the government doesn't have to go in the opposite direction and devote resources to making crypto thrive. They could just toss anyone using crypto to the fraud people in jail. Casinos are regulated at the state and federal level. They're defined as financial institutions under the Bank Secrecy Act. But the real forcing mechanism for compliance is the possibility of criminal indictment. The regulators can facilitate this by loudly letting customers know that they are taking on huge risks by investing their money in digital assets. If you try to trade in penny stock markets, the website for those transactions warns you that it is reserved for, quote, professional and sophisticated investors with a high risk tolerance for trading companies that may have limited information available. Investors are strongly advised to proceed with caution and thoroughly research companies before making any investment decisions, unquote. There's your regulation. A strong, quote, let the buyer beware warning. This is similar to the large warning labels on cigarettes, as well as the industry funded public service announcements that smoking is harmful to human health. That ad campaign came out of a master settlement with the tobacco industry, and law enforcement officials should think about replicating that strategy. Meanwhile, you don't see pro cigarette ads on television anymore thanks to a ban enacted over 50 years ago. One actual option for legislation is to do the same with crypto marketing. Larry David and Matt Damon have helped entice people into highly risky and fraudulent markets. This has been very lucrative for media and sports leagues. Specifically, Miami is hastily changing the name of the FTX Arena, where it plays home games. But if the harms outweigh the benefits, there's ample precedent to limit advertising. Even without a law, the Federal Trade Commission has the authority to enforce truth in advertising laws and can get involved here the same way that it does policing multi-level marketing schemes like Herbalife. Just this week, a private lawsuit was filed against celebrity endorsers of FTX on the grounds that they were pitching unregistered securities. The regulators and law enforcement can similarly pursue fraudulent marketing. And if you really want to get into it, a large tax on crypto transactions designed specifically to reduce the industry's size and impact on the economy would be appropriate. I get antsy says Dave Dayen. When I see the Federal Reserve's Vice Chair for Supervision, Michael Barr, who himself has been tied up in crypto companies and trade groups, say that the FTX crash demonstrates the need for, quote, strong guardrails, unquote, and regulation akin to that of other financial services products. Crypto doesn't share those qualities. We don't need it for a functioning financial system. We should treat fraud like fraud. I thought that was one hell of an article by Dave Dayen. Okay, I have to agree with all of these, with all of these analyses, okay, of crypto. What function is performed by crypto in the financial system? What does it really do that, okay, is useful? What does it do other than provide an environment for gambling? It can't be claimed that it's a store of value anymore. It certainly is not a currency. So what is it? Okay, it's just a commodity product. But the problem is that people don't buy it because it's a commodity that they can consume. They buy it because the transactional activity itself leads to situations where the crypto increases its value just on the basis of share trading in it. The more trading, the more activity, the more the so called value goes up. But when the musical chairs game stops, there's no value stored in the crypto. All the value is based on the game going and going and going and never stopping. So it's all bubbles and no reality. And that, my friends, is the truth of the matter. So, uh, okay, I'll take your comments now. Kay says, I like cash in a can better. It doesn't even have to be in a can, Kay. Stephen K. say hi, and Russell Gorman says, evening, Joe. Hiya, Russell. Great to see you. Brandy Weaver says, hello. I will be heading to bed soon, but I wanted to stop by. Thank you, Brandy. I appreciate it. Steve Wolfbrand says, crypto is a scam. Remember, dare to be great. Yes, I do remember dare to be great. Also, remember, make America great again. Kay says, hi, Brandy. Steve says, hi, Brandy. Me too. Kay says, I listened to a lever discussion with Matt Stoller last night. Yeah, Matt is right on top of this, I think. Yeah, usually Dave Sirota, okay, and Matt, uh, but Dave Dayen, okay, Ryan Grimm are kind of a cluster of journalists who talk a lot, okay, to one another. Uh, and whose work is very reliable, talking about their journalistic work. I know Ryan Grimm's opinions are not always very uh, um, 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 extremely reliable, but I think he's pretty good on reporting facts in the DC sphere. Brandy Weaver says, hi, Kay and Steve. Steve Wolfbrand says, punk kid scams millions. Love it. Kay says, I like cash in a can better. Laugh out loud. And Steve says, Pocahontas wants crypto paid in Wamptum. Steve Wolfbrand says, don't buy crypto, friends. Steve Wolfbrand said it's a fake. There's no reality there. Yes, folks, I agree. There is no reality there. Okay, so thanks for coming. This is a brief one here tonight. Kay says, I keep my cash in an empty coffee can. Okay, Kay, be careful. Okay, any other comments? If not, I'm going to say goodbye for tonight. I will be back tomorrow. I'm planning 2 streams for the morning, or actually 1 stream for the morning and 1 stream for the afternoon. But the morning may blend into the afternoon. And then, of course, another stream, okay, at 9 p.m. These streams are all on current occurrences, but obviously they all relate to empowering democracy in some way. What we're seeing with Sam Bankman-Fried here is that he used his crypto money to penetrate the political system and to undermine its operations, to move it in a direction that he wanted to move it in. It was the money doing this. It was profoundly anti-democratic because the system moved not due to the strength of his opinions, okay, or his views, but it moved in response to the amount of money that he contributed to various candidates, and that was directed against candidates who were much more worthy than his candidates were. So keep that in mind, folks. That was something undermining democracy, and it itself got undermined because it was fraud. So I'll see you tomorrow for more good streams, and thank you very much for coming. And by the way, Dee, thank you for being here.